Sometimes I look at the call screener and just go, this is about to be fun. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Simple question on a Vibe Check Tuesday, 301-230-0980. Who you want as the Commanders head coach as we are now in week, what is this, 2, 3 of the search? I guess technically in week 3. No, week 2.
It's technically been 2 weeks, and we're heading into the third because we've been searching
2
since.
complete weeks.
Yeah.
Just a reminder, like, if they wind up hiring someone who plays in the Super Bowl, we're looking at, like, a Valentine's Day hire. Just so everybody's on the same. Like, that's what happened with Steichen and Gannon last year.
That's lovely.
Yeah. Reunited.
Match made in heaven.
Yeah. We got to have some fun with that. Keep writing those down.
Uh-huh.
All right. Let's do it. 301-230-0980 is the phone number. Let's start off with Lap. Lap, what's up, man?
Hey, what's up, Craig? Man, I want Eric Bieniemy, man. I like this guy, man. He make you want to, be accountable. He wants you to be your best self. He make you run through a brick wall, man. And he challenges his players, man. And it's okay to, be a little tough, man, because the guys here in the building was too comfortable. That's why they complained about Ron, Eric Bieniemy, because Ron, he let them do what they want to do. You know what I'm saying? And you can't do that.
All right, Lap, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question, because I don't disagree like factually with a lot of the stuff that you're saying. That there was too many people that were too comfortable. That Bieniemy, I think Bieniemy cares immensely about his players as people. And there's been just too many players that have come out and talked about that, who care about him a lot and speak highly of him. But what did Eric Bieniemy come here to do?
I think he came here to be in a better position, of course, than he was in Kansas City.
By doing what?
I think low key, being a assistant head coach and an offensive coordinator, something he's never done before.
Right.
Also,
and here's my question.
He's in a position to be a head coach too.
Here's my question. How'd that go?
Yeah. It didn't go as well, but I mean, you can't blame the entire fault of the team just solely on him.
Right, but just because it wasn't all his fault doesn't mean that he now gets to be the head coach. Like, he didn't do a good job.
Well, I still think he needs to get an opportunity to.
For what? This ain't a charity?
For it. Huh?
This ain't a charity?
Well, this is based on. Well, because you're looking at it one-sided, though, Craig. You're looking at it based on what he did here. You're not looking overall his whole overall knowledge, his football IQ. He played the game.
So did a lot of these other guys that are candidates. Like, a lot of the stuff you just said, you could say about Ron Rivera, who they just fired.
Yeah, but it's been for years that Eric Bieniemy should be a head coach. A lot of people said that. Now it's like, oh, we're looking at one season with the Commanders, and it's like, oh, he shouldn't get an opportunity. Come on, man. That's crazy, man. Like,
it's not. What
gotta
has he done?
The track record of the people that's Craig. You got to look at the track record of what people are doing now. They're building off of success, and they're getting credit off success from what other head coaches are, because they're trying to get an opportunity too. So you can't say he's not well deserving because of, what he did in one season with this team, and he's been around this business for a long time. Like,
the whole point, Lap, we got some other folks on hold. I appreciate your call. And, I've talked about this before with EB, and it's pretty simple. He came here to prove that he could manage an offense, coordinate, build something, whatever, without Andy Reid. And he was not set up in a very good position, but he ultimately made that decision. He was like, this is worth it for me. I'm going to go to Washington. And he had more power. I heard Keim say this today on his podcast. Eric Bieniemy had more power as an assistant head coach in Washington than anybody since Marvin Lewis when Steve Spurrier was here And from hearing Keim tell stories of the Spurrier days, of what it was really like behind the scenes, Marvin was the head coach. Spurrier was kind of the quasi-offensive coordinator who was up on the hill watching practice from above, practicing his golf swing. Marvin was actually the one running everything. So, yeah, Marvin had a lot of power, especially on the defense. But as an assistant coach, there wasn't some mandate to make Sam Howell pass the ball all the time. Eric Bieniemy wanted to do that. Eric Bieniemy just took a young quarterback this year with 19 passes worth of NFL experience and made him the highest attempt guy in the NFL. That is not someone who you look at their resume and go, yep, sign me up as the head coach for a number 2 pick coming in next year at quarterback, most likely. Absolutely no way. Yes, he has had a ton of success. Yes, he's really smart. But there's no such thing as deserving a job. And specifically right now, like, I'm going to take that back even. There is such thing as deserving a job. And I think based off his resume in total, Eric Bieniemy deserves a shot at being a head coach. I don't think that's a false statement. However, if I'm looking at it from the team side, I'm not interested in him because he's not the number 1 option. If I want an innovative offensive mind who's got a proven track record over some period of time, like Ben Johnson's 2 years in Detroit, pretty darn good, with much less talent than what Eric did in Kansas City. And by the way, those if we want to parse it out, it's pretty easy to look at Kansas City and go, hey, man, yeah, you were great. You just put the ball in Mahomes' hands. Patrick Mahomes is maybe the greatest quarterback to ever play the game. And so I'm looking at it for Washington as, hey, finally, we're the one that people want to go home with. We are the best option on the market. Why would I have to give EB a job because he quote unquote deserves it? This isn't a charity. This is the NFL. It's ruthless. And yeah, he's now interviewed for 17 head coaching jobs. Maybe there's something in those interviews that tells people, I don't know about that. Maybe those people are racist turds. Also possible. It's the NFL. Wouldn't be the first time. But the results are what they are based off of last year. He came here to do it without Patrick Mahomes, without Andy Reid, and he failed the test. If this was the test, he failed. You don't get to fail and get the job. That nixes the deserving thing. Stop doing the EB thing on those grounds. I'm not saying he's not smart. I'm not saying he's not a good coach. I don't even know that he wouldn't succeed 100%. I think there are better options that are more likely to succeed and more likely to succeed at a higher level. And you can build with over time because they don't irritate people with the same frequency that Eric Bieniemy does. And maybe some of those people, that says more about them than it does about EB, but it's a tale as old as his career. So why deal with it if you don't have to? It's just suboptimal. Go for optimal. That's the point. Last call for this segment, but we got plenty of more time to take some calls for the rest of the hour. So if you're on hold, don't go anywhere if I don't call your name. 301-230-0980. Let's go to Gary. Gary, thanks for calling. You are on The Hoffman Show.
Thank you for taking my call. To follow up on what that last caller said, EB would not be my first choice, okay? Only because I think there are probably greener pastures out there for him. He gambled on himself. What I like about him is he gambled on himself. Nobody would have told him to take this job with a 5th-round draft choice as your quarterback and trying to propel yourself to a head coaching job. He gambled on himself.
Why do we want gamblers as a head coach?
Well, wait a minute. I'm not saying I want him, okay?
I'm saying, but like that shouldn't be a positive point on his resume.
No.
I want judgment.
He gambled on himself. He gambled on himself.
Sure.
He said, I can go in here and I can do this. I appreciate that. Okay. You gambled on yourself. Okay. That's why you have your own show. Okay. I appreciate that he took that because this was not a desirable job. Okay. When he took it, it wasn't. All right. So what I'm saying is, for that caller, I think Eric Bieniemy could do the same job in Detroit that Ben Johnson's doing. I think he could have done the same job that this Slovak guy, who just all of a sudden is becoming everyone's darling after 1 year. Okay, that's the frustration that people have when people are talking down EB, because these guys instantly become head coaching candidates after 1 or 2 years, and EB has been bouncing around.
Here's the thing, Gary. You can rewind the tape to the spring, and when Eric signed here, I was as vocal and, by the way, as straightforward as anybody on some of the reasons why Eric Bieniemy had not been a head coach and why it made absolutely no sense based off of his resume. However, to say that he could have done the same job that Johnson did in Detroit is just incorrect based off the data available. What Johnson did specifically in Detroit,
What's the data available?
The tape doesn't lie.
What's the tape? They got better running backs. They have better running backs.
They have better design. Okay. They have a better cohesive game plan. They have ways to get their playmakers the ball. All the stuff that everybody called in about all year about this offensive failing, Ben Johnson does it arguably better the last 2 years than any other coordinator in the league, Kyle Shanahan included.
But he's got great players. He has underrated players there.
Okay, so you got great players here like Terry McLaurin that just had the worst season of his career.
No. The stats don't tell us that. What do the stats tell us? That they get no separation. People are glossing over that. Okay? The fact is, our receivers don't get any separation. That's not scheme. That's you lining up against your guy and you beating your guy.
Oh, but it is scheme.
And they don't do it.
It is scheme because within the numbers of average separation, Gary, hold on. If you're going to make a point, you're going to let me counter it, or I'm going to hang up on you because that's how this works on the radio. So some of those numbers are averages, right? That average yard separation, yes?
I guess. I take your word for that.
Okay. So when a coordinator schemes open a receiver and they're open by 15 yards based off a win with the pen, with X's and O's, that goes into the average, yes?
It goes into the average, but it also goes to the talent of the player.
Sure. Okay. But there are times.
St. John is better than Terry McLaurin.
I don't disagree with that. With the season that Amon-Ra St. Brown just had.
They have a much better tight end.
Sure.
They have a great tight end, a young tight end. They have 2 great backs.
And what does Ben Johnson do?
They have a young stud.
What does Ben Johnson do?
What I'm saying? I think EB could do the same thing. But it's neither here nor there. I don't want EB as the head coach. Okay, but I'm just telling you, that's the sensitivity that people have.
Well, people need to stop being so sensitive about this and actually watch the tape and stop going with feelings and start going with actual information.
No, because they see in the NFL, okay, what has been historically a racist league.
1,000%.
You can't blame people. Yeah, but what I'm saying, I'm trying to give you some perspective on why people are in EB's corner. Okay, you're looking at it objectively. I know what you said. I know what you said a year ago. You were in EB's corner. I'm not. My 100%. Frustration is not with you. I'm just trying to explain where that caller is coming from. Is why he said, look, you guys are looking at one piece where this guy has not lived up to expectations, and that washes away and gives credence to all of these other opportunities that he didn't get. That's the frustration. But what I wanted to say
hold on. Gary, I promise I'm actually going to agree with you for 1 second. And then I promise, even though we're over time, I'm going to let you get to your main point you called in with. I'm really glad you said that because that is good perspective, and I should have been more sensitive to that. That was very well put, and I appreciate you for saying that. So thank you.
Okay. I appreciate that. But what I want, and I think what's best for Washington, is getting somebody that's proven, okay? You're not going to get Belichick, but Vrabel and Quinn are out there. And what there you can take all of these hotshot coordinators and you look over the history of time, there have been no bigger, more disappointments than hotshot coordinators. These are 2 coaches that have led teams to playoffs. When they sit in that seat, they know how to be a head coach. They've led teams to playoffs. Dan Quinn should have won a Super Bowl. You see what he's done with the Dallas defense. The Dallas defense is one of the worst ever. A couple years ago, he takes over, and he gets them in the top 10 immediately. I think he's a leader, and I think Vrabel, the only thing that scares me about him is he may have some ego issues, but he knows how to coach. So that's what I think Washington needs is somebody, not a gamble, but they need somebody who has done it before and can immediately take over that seat and lead men. That's what I want. So,
all right, Gary, thanks for the call.
I appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate your call. And he made a good point about why people are sensitive to EB. At some point, the data available has to override the sensitivities. And I hope that people can realize that it for EB, like, I'd understand, like, hey, it's not personal. And then if it's about you, it feels personal. I had a Twitter interaction like that today where I had to check myself. And it's much less serious. Like, it's Twitter interaction. Craig, get over it. But, like, you know, you have this moment where someone's like, hey, it's not personal. It's just the way you're doing your job. And it's like, you know what? That's fair. The way EB did the job, he doesn't deserve to be the head coach here. It's just not. And I think that eventually, too, we have to we should be skeptical on the grounds that Gary was talking about, along racial grounds of the discrimination that's happened in the history of the NFL to what's going on or what's happened to Eric Bieniemy over time. But also when 16 and now 17 different people interview you and go, I don't think so. As it maybe because the guy doesn't, like, I spent the first segment telling everybody that the interview is the most important thing, not the resume. The interview is more important than the resume. He's interviewed now 17 times. The resume is good enough to get him in the door. The interviews are not good enough to get him the job. And by the way, this year, now, the most recent thing on the resume is one of the worst things on the resume. It's not going to help your case. As for the leader, hotshot coordinator thing, I'm looking at the head coaches in the most previous Super Bowls right now. Sirianni, Andy Reid, Sean McVay, Zach Taylor, Arians, Andy Reid, Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Bill Belichick, Doug Peterson, Bill Belichick. Like, and even, you know, you go back to Belichick versus Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn was a hotshot coordinator 3 years before he made the Super Bowl with Atlanta when he was with Seattle. So, it's not a hotshot offensive coordinator, but most of those guys have turned into really good head coaches recently. Like, the guys off the McVay tree have generally done, and the Shanahan tree have generally done pretty freaking good. Those are the guys that are coaching this weekend. So, Vrabel's interesting to me, but I don't trust him to build an offense because everyone off the Belichick tree has been a disaster offensively. What's his network like? Who's going to be his OC? And Quinn, like, once Kyle left, really wasn't that good. I do think he's a dynamic leader of men. I actually wouldn't be that mad at Dan Quinn. I don't think he's the best option. But, and I also think he's been introspective and learned from that first time through in Atlanta. But, like, to pretend like because they've failed as head coaches somewhere else, that they're better suited than someone who hasn't failed yet is not exactly logistical to me. I feel like at this point, Anthony, we should just keep going and then I should double break. Yeah. Okay. Let's keep going. Let's go to Nelson. Nelson, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Craig. Thanks for taking my call.
You got it.
I appreciate it. Love your shows. Love you even on YouTube more.
Appreciate that. Who you want to be the head coach of the Commanders?
Got to be Johnson. Got to be Ben Johnson. I was watching Hard Knocks over the weekend. A lot of people might not have realized that, but you can still get it if you got some type of streaming service.
Yep.
My God, the coaching staff that he's coming from fires you up. And if you on that staff, and somebody on your show mentioned something about leadership a few weeks ago, leadership is not going to be an issue with this coach. There's no this guy can coach from the turnaround that they did in 2 years, turnaround that they did offensively. You know, I like the way he's going to bring fire to this team, hopefully, if he's given the opportunity. Because he's going to get wherever he goes, he's going to have a fired-up team offensively. And I think he's going to have a fired-up. You know, you got not only he's going to be the coach, so you got to have a quarterback coach, offensive coordinator. And hopefully, I'm thinking that we can get the quarterback coach from Detroit. You know who that is?
Who is, I'm trying to remember who's the QB coach right now in Detroit, actually.
Used to be the quarterback here. I can't remember. Oh, my God. Play for Jacksonville.
Oh, Brunell. Yeah.
Brunell. Yeah. So I'm hoping if he can get, him to come along, that would be a great hire to go along.
Totally agree.
Offense.
Nelson, I got a bunch of calls stacked up, but I appreciate you listening in and watching us on YouTube. Thank you, man. And to that point, there's already some stories out that Hank Fraley, the offensive line coach in Detroit, would be the OC under Ben Johnson here, which would be a phenomenal hire. He's one of the best offensive line coaches in the league. That's a position where the Commanders haven't really done well since Bill Callahan left. And even Callahan, he's an amazing O-line coach, but it wasn't exactly a perfect fit with the offensive coordinators here. Whether that was Sean, Jay, Kevin, like those guys didn't always see eye to eye, and that marrying of the pass game and the run game that is so essential to what Ben Johnson does offensively, like would automatically be there if Johnson brings Fraley, with him. So that's really exciting. And I also think like talking to people who have either talked to Ben Johnson or been around him, like the dude's a dynamic leader. Just because you don't see it and Dan Campbell overshadows that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So I totally agree with the leadership thing. And I also think that there's been like some revisionist history on Jared Goff that's super weird. The 3 years between Goff making the Super Bowl and Ben Johnson taking over as the OC were bad years for Jared Goff. Like his last year in LA, he was 20 touchdowns to 13 picks. They won 9 games. They went to the Super Bowl. Belichick destroyed them. They had 2 bad years, and Sean was like, oh, you got to upgrade here. Like, if we want to win the Super Bowl in L.A., which was the goal for the franchise at the time, we got to do better. Goff's not growing the way we want him to. So they punt on Goff. They get Stafford. It works out for both teams in the end. But the first year, Anthony Lynn is the coordinator for Dan Campbell. Goff was not good. He had a QBR of like 39.5 for the season. Ben Johnson comes in as the OC, and Goff's damn near in the MVP conversation. They've been one of the best 5 teams in football for a year and a half. And their offense was good early last year. Their defense was abysmal, which is why they lost a bunch of one-score games and started like 1-7 and then dug themselves out of the hole and damn near made the playoffs. So, like, he's impressive. And the other thing I like about Johnson, he's coached quarterbacks and he's coached tight ends. Dude knows football on all levels. Run game, pass game, everything there is to know about offensive football. And he knows how defenses want to attack you, which makes you a better head coach. All right, let's go to Bob. Bob, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
You got it.
First off, no disrespect to Eric Bieniemy, but the 2 places I think he's known for his best coaching jobs, he arguably had the best players at the position ever in Patrick Mahomes and AP.
That is also true.
Now, I personally like Bobby from the Texans as a quarterback. As a head coach, because last year he took the number 3 pick. I wonder what he can do with the number 2 pick and stabilize that position. But I do believe it has to be an offensive-minded coach to grow with that quarterback we're going to take at number 2.
All right, Bob, thanks for the call. I don't disagree with him as being super intriguing. You know, we had Nick Wagner, who covers the 49ers for ESPN on the show like 2 weeks ago at this point, a week and a half ago, when they hired Adam Peters. And I asked him about Bobby Slowick, and Nick talking to me about Bobby Slowick reminded of me talking to other people about Sean McVay back in 2016. Like, there's something special about that dude. And yeah, he did work really well with the young quarterback. Also, that young quarterback is a freaking dude. Like, that guy, CJ Stroud, is sick. And to Eric Bieniemy's credit, like, I think some coaches could coach anyone, and some coaches are kind of designed to coach super elite players. Like, some coaches are the kind of guy that can get the absolute most out of a Patrick Mahomes. They can squeeze it, but you put him with someone like a Jared Goff, and it's a disaster. And I think Bieniemy might be one of those guys that, like, yeah, he's a perfect fit in Kansas City with the type of personalities that they have there. And it doesn't mean it's the only way to do it. Same thing with Adrian Peterson. But, like, Adrian Peterson was an alien. There was no such thing as working Adrian Peterson too hard. If they can draft an alien at number 2, great. EB is kind of appealing then. That's why I said, like, EB going to the Chargers with Herbert, kind of appealing. But what you're more realistically going to get to try to build a team in the model of the Niners, of the Lions, of a lot of these teams that didn't hit the grand slam at quarterback, I think someone like a Ben Johnson is a better, safer pick, or a Slowick, or one of these guys that has a more experience working, I would say, on that level. Last but not least, let's go to Drew in Rockville. Drew, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, what's happening, Craig?
What's up, man? Appreciate the call.
All right, so my number one is Mike MacDonald. That's my number one, and then number two for me would be Ben Johnson. I want to throw something in quick when it comes to EB.
Yeah.
EB did not help himself with the lack of balance. I'm an EB fan, but that is true, is that he did not help himself with the lack of balance. But we also have to stop pretending, some of us, that guys were never open. Several times each game, even when Sam had good games, there were guys open that Sam missed.
100%.
That happened. That happened quite a bit. So we could get into semantics when it comes to separation, and yes, some of that is scheme. But even with that, you still have several times during the game where Sam just flat out missed someone. And you can also tell with Sam kind of made up his mind, okay, let me get it over here to Brian Robinson real quick. Let me get it to Antonio Gibson real quick. Let me go to Logan real quick. Instead of waiting for, Dotson, that extra half second for Dotson to get open, that extra half second for Terry to get open. That happened a lot this season. So
100%.
It wasn't this horrible coordinator. It's just that the lack of balance is what hurt him. And Craig, this stuff probably with the offense would have been a lot different if Ron didn't undercut EB. In the beginning with the guys are going in talking to him and this, that, in meetings and all this other stuff. I think the offense probably would have functioned a lot better if EB had that proper backing from Ron.
Drew, I would say this. I don't know whether you're correct on that or not. I think a bigger factor is I think the offense would have functioned better if EB had been able to hire all of his position coaches that he wanted. I think that's a way bigger deal than like Ron saying something in the media that I don't really know if it was a big deal. I don't know that it wasn't a big deal, and maybe for certain guys it was. Some guys just never really respected him, and other guys did. Like, I don't know what kind of mixed bag that was. But ultimately, the inability to teach the offense at a high level to get the level of execution you need to win in this league is on some level, of course, a reflection of Eric, but also is a reflection of the position coaches, many of which he didn't get to hire and probably would have replaced if there wasn't a spending freeze from ownership because they were in the dumbest season in NFL history.
And this is why it's insanity to behave as if the man could never be a head coach and be a functional one.
Right.
But if he has his people... Mahomes is up there saying, man, this guy made me a better player. This is a whole
thing. For sure. But like you said, who are your two top candidates? MacDonald and Johnson. Like, you would still, not EB, it's not really about EB. It's about the fact that there are better candidates than EB. And just because there's familiarity and he was here doesn't mean he gets to jump the line of those better candidates.
Listen, I wouldn't puke if EB was the head coach. You see what I'm saying? I'd
Fair
be okay
enough.
with it.
Fair enough. Hey, Drew, I appreciate the call. Thank you.
All right.
All right. That will – well, shoot. Now we're even late on the second one. So we'll come back. We'll wrap up the hour. We might have time for one more call. But then Michael Phillips will join us coming up at 5 o'clock here on The Hoffman Show.
This is The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.